We've got an update on the Giannis Antetokounmpo front, the expectation around the NBA now that Giannis will ultimately leave the Milwaukee Bucks and the Knicks will not be the only team in the running. I'm Trevor Lane. This is the Basketball Bulletin. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Let's check this out. This is Brian Windhorst of ESPN talking about the expectation around the NBA that ultimately Giannis will see his way out of Milwaukee.
Yeah, there's been an expectation for quite some time that Giannis's days in Milwaukee, one way or another, are numbered. Whether that was going to happen this year, whether it's going to happen potentially during this season, or whether it could happen next summer, as Bobby laid out there. And when you get to situations like this, I find it very useful to focus on actions over words. Let's look at the actions of the parties that we have discussed here. The Milwaukee Bucks waived and stretched Damian Lillard. That cost them $100 million in dead money on their books. Then they spent an additional $100 million to sign Miles Turner this summer. Those are not the actions of a team that is about to trade the best player they've had since Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, okay? Then you look at the New York Knicks. Obviously, they knew it was possible that Giannis would be available, and we saw some teams this summer potentially hold back on moves with the idea that Giannis could be available. So the idea that you wouldn't be prepared for this kind of phone call, I don't think is true. And despite knowing that, the Knicks went ahead and extended Mikal Bridges, which significantly limited their ability to make a major trade. Again, that action indicates that they didn't think they were in position to make this type of trade right now. And let's go to Giannis. If you want to be traded as a star player that makes over $50 million a year in the apron era, especially if you have a small selection of teams that you want to be traded to, you do not ask for a trade or discuss a trade in August. Those discussions happen before the NBA offseason begins. That's not to say that a trade couldn't happen, but certainly he would have to understand that.
Okay, so Windhorst making the point that, hey, look, there's an expectation around the NBA that eventually Giannis is going to be leaving the Bucks. However, if you're the Knicks, and you know that Giannis wants to go to New York if he leaves the Bucks, if you believe there's a chance that he could actually land there this summer, you wouldn't go and make moves this summer that would prohibit that from happening. And that's what they did. They made the move to extend Mikal Bridges. If you are the Bucks and you believed that ultimately you were going to have to move on from Giannis Antetokounmpo, are you waiving and stretching the salary of Damian Lillard, which still sits on their books and will for the next 5 years? Oh my God, it's so ugly. Will sit on their books for the next 5 years as dead money. Look at that, $22.5 million in dead cap just sitting on their books. Would you do that and then go commit all that money to Miles Turner if you were getting ready to trade Giannis Antetokounmpo? Well, no, you wouldn't do that. And then if you're Giannis, would you take all summer him and Holland and waiting and, well, I have to see how things shape up? If you ultimately wanted to get to the Knicks, that was a conversation you needed to have. Frankly, I mean, before even June, that you need to have that conversation, because when there's the most flexibility around the NBA, it's in the draft, it's in the early days of July, before roster spots are filled up and draft picks are still available and all of those things. It's not taking place in August, which is when they had that conversation. From the reporting earlier today, the Knicks and the Bucks had their conversation about a Giannis Antetokounmpo trade, with the Bucks side saying the Knicks never really put their best assets on the table, where there wasn't any point in continuing the conversation because it just wasn't close. And then the Knicks saying, well, they didn't buy that the Bucks were actually going to trade Giannis Antetokounmpo. And I think all of this kind of fits with that, where the Knicks figure, why put the best offer on the table right now if we don't actually believe that the Bucks are going to trade? We think they're just wasting our time. We're just spinning our wheels. Why put the best offer on the table right now? However, to answer that question, why put the best offer on the table right now that you could possibly offer? Well, it's because now, back in August, the Knicks had an exclusive negotiating window. Now, if the Bucks don't get off to a good start, that's going to change. That's going to change in a big, big way. And reporting now from Shams Charania that even Giannis Antetokounmpo is starting to look at other options besides the Knicks. I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. First, quick shout out to our sponsor, Sleeper. They do a fantastic job over there. If you've never heard of the Sleeper app, or even if you have, here's a little secret. It's more than just a platform for season-long fantasy leagues. Millions of users have enjoyed playing fantasy sports on Sleeper, but the app offers so much more: live stats, real-time updates, and visualization on all stats. A news feed with lightning-fast updates on your favorite players and teams. That is so critical. I use that all the time. The real-time chat, engage with other users about individual plays and performances during the NFL and NBA season. So download the #1 sports app and experience it for yourself. Go check out the Sleeper app. You can use the link in the description down below, and you use our promo code Bulletin. You get a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions do apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today, and right now they've got a phenomenal deal going on. You get a free $20 entry, no deposit needed. So go check them out. Use the link in that description down below. We always appreciate it when you guys support the companies that help support us and help us keep the lights on and all of that. All right. So let's get to this. Shams Charania in some comments that will surely draw some interest, perk up the ears of a number of teams around the NBA.
If it does reopen in the season, this whole Giannis Antetokounmpo element to the NBA season, that window is no longer exclusive just to the Knicks, and that's going to include other NBA teams. I expect it to go beyond just the Knicks. Giannis Antetokounmpo, his agent Alex Horazas of Octagon, they've been figuring out which teams, if this does get to a point of a trade request, which team could find its way, which multiple teams could find their way. And I think that process will continue into the season if it lends to that. But the quarter mark of the year, 25 games, I'm keeping my eye on that for the Knicks and the rest of the league.
Okay. So think about that. It was easy to miss in all of that. Giannis Antetokounmpo is already looking at other teams around the NBA. It's not just the Knicks. He's already starting to figure out which other teams could trade for him. And the Knicks have a problem because they just don't have any draft assets. Essentially, if the Knicks are going to trade for Giannis, you're going to have to take some of your guys, some of your assets. Maybe you have to wait. Mikal Bridges is only trade eligible for 5 days this season before the trade deadline hits. But you're going to have to take some of these guys and you're going to have to turn them into some type of draft capital. And if you're the Bucks, you'd have to be willing to pivot and now move forward in your future with $22.5 million of Damian Lillard just dead on your books. Plus, you just signed Miles Turner to this deal. You're going to have to completely change your franchise because you're going to have to get more of an eye towards the future. Unless you decide, give me Karl Anthony Towns and Mikal Bridges and we'll take it and run. And we'll give you Giannis and a salary. I don't know, Giannis and Kyle Kuzma, a negative-ish value contract, and give us Cat and Bridges, and we'll do that. And we'll take Cat and Bridges, and we'll try to win right now with Miles Turner. And there we go. Maybe that's what the Bucks decide. I doubt it. I would think if they're trading Giannis, they would want as many future assets as they can. And if that's the case, even mid-season, even when Mikal Bridges is available, it's going to be a challenge for the Knicks because they would have to turn these guys into future assets. You'd have to send Mikal Bridges, you have to send Cat, whoever else, to a third team, have a third team, maybe in a fourth team, send stuff to the Bucks that they want. So recognizing that, Shams is saying, hey, Giannis is already looking around the NBA to see who can trade for him. Who else can get a deal done realistically midseason? Giannis and his agent starting to figure that out. So this is by no means is Giannis locked in Milwaukee. That is not the case right now. Instead, we've got a Giannis Antetokounmpo who is, having some wandering eyes here, is looking around the NBA and trying to figure out which team can potentially trade for him should midseason he decide he wants out. And when we look at the Bucks' early schedule, because this is going to be so critical, the Bucks now have all this pressure. They have to win right now. Giannis said 25 games. If they're not winning, if they're not looking like, or I'm sorry, Shams said 25 games. If they're not looking like a contender, does Giannis just say, I'm out? Especially, let's say he identifies 2 teams, 3 teams, 4 teams, whatever it is that he thinks can trade for him. And one of those teams gets off to a hot start. One of those teams looks maybe even better. One of those teams looks like a true contender. Does Giannis just say, hey, trade me there? He has the ability to be a free agent, not this coming summer, but the one after that. And that will give him some measure of control. So we look at the early schedule. Well, you play the Washington Wizards opening night for the Bucks. That's not a bad place to start. At Toronto, you never know. They've got some decent pieces, but I would assume the Bucks will be the heavy favorites. But then at Cavs, you get the Knicks. Oh, that'll be fun. The Knicks in Milwaukee, game 4 of the season. A lot riding on that game. No subplots there, right? A Golden State, Sacramento, Indiana, Toronto, Chicago. Nice to be in the Eastern Conference. Houston, that gets a little more difficult there. But then you get Charlotte, the Lakers. So let's go through November. Cleveland, that's a tough one. Philly, Detroit. All right, that could be anything there. Portland, Miami. Oh, look at that. How many games in is that? I didn't count. That's got to be about 20, right? That's got to be close. The end of November, right about, that's got to be somewhere close to 20 games in, maybe a little bit less, at New York. Are you kidding me? The basketball gods smiling upon any NBA fans who like drama. Giannis right around, somewhere around that 20-game mark, that evaluation period that Shams is talking about. He's going to be playing against the Knicks in New York. I can't wait to hear what that Knicks crowd sounds like. That's going to be absolutely fantastic. But look, the Bucks, they've got to get off to a good start. I think that's pretty clear. Shams saying that Giannis and his agent are already looking around the league to find other places, find teams that are capable of trading for him. There's one thing that we know. If it's put out there, hey, who wants Giannis? 29 hands are going up. Every team is going to have interest to some degree. The question is, who can actually execute a trade? Who can actually give the Bucks what they want in exchange for Giannis Antetokounmpo? You know, a lot of teams will try. The Spurs could be in an interesting position. They've got young players. They've got draft capital. That's a team to watch. Of course, we've heard about the Rockets. They made their move, though, for Kevin Durant. Could they still get into the mix for Giannis Antetokounmpo? Unfortunately, these are. I always complain about the West and how stacked it is. These are West teams that I'm mentioning in the early going here. But Miami will certainly try. They are rumored to have been willing to make an offer that didn't include Bam Adebayo. I don't think they would have enough without including Bam Adebayo to get Giannis, but of course, Miami will do what they can to try to get into the mix, but reality is pretty much every team. And here's the scary thought. What about OKC? They've got $1 billion draft picks, right? They've got salaries they can stack up. They've got team options on those deals, and they've got all the picks. What if OKC just says, we already got a title. Why not try to win a few more? And they push all the chips in. That's a scary thought for the rest of the NBA. But everybody, give me your thoughts in the comments down below. Where do you think Giannis could ultimately wind up? My hope, my genuine, sincere hope is that he winds up just staying with the Bucks. I think it's really cool when you get somebody who winds up staying an entire career with just one team. It's a rarity these days. And so I hope that they can figure out a way to make it work in Milwaukee. But if Giannis, as all the reporting suggests, really just wants to win a championship, if I'm being honest, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon in Milwaukee. I give them credit going for it, biting the bullet, and that was a tough bullet to bite, the Damian Lillard salary, having that as dead money, all to just go get Miles Turner. I like Miles Turner. I just don't look at this Bucks team and say this is the team that's coming out of the East. They're certainly not slotting ahead of the Cavs and the Knicks, at least on paper, but that's why you play the games. We'll see what happens when the ball is live. We get about 20, 25 games in, maybe that last game at MSG against the Knicks. And maybe Giannis says, all right, guys, it's time. I want to go somewhere else. And then we're off and running. The entire league will be after him. Everybody, give me your thoughts in the comments down below. Till next time, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See ya and stay safe.